I'm a citizen of a developing country living unemployed in a developed country due to saturated opportunities. As an introvert, I feel very comfortable with a small circle of friends, and these relationships mean a great deal to me. I had to cut a couple of toxic friends out of my life, but now I'm not sure if I'm overthinking things or overexerting myself to save this friendship, especially since it's my second longest friendship. I included everything I could remember, but I may have missed some incidents that I can't recall. My friend of 8 years is an extroverted citizen from a first world country. We met during our studies in another country, along with her brother. I had a complicated situation with him that ended last year when he ghosted me, leaving me with unresolved feelings. However, I've never expressed this to his sister because I truly value our friendship. For the past year, we've been in touch almost every single day, from studying for our license exams to planning her wedding. For the last 5 months, I've been helping her with paperwork to open her business. She insisted that she would offer me well-paying remote work once her business is up and running, although I told her I genuinely don't expect anything in return. Eventually, I agreed to her offer about work because as a citizen of a developing country, my income barely covers housing and food, which she is aware of. Fast forward to 2 months ago, when she told me she was planning to get married in XXX country, which is near where I live. She confided in me about the challenges she was facing with buying a house with her fiancé and managing the finances. I shared that I wasn't in a good place without a job and had received an offer, but the hours were demanding for very little pay. She advised me not to take it, assuring me she would pay me well once her business officially opened and that she urgently needed my help with the paperwork. After considering it logically, I decided to decline the job offer. Fast forward, she asked me if I could fly to XXX to help her select wedding venues, and I initially agreed. My visa was approved, but I didn't have enough funds for the flight since some of my hotel costs weren't refunded when she changed her departure dates. This meant I had to cover an additional 50% of my hotel, which she offered to reimburse, but I declined because she's my friend. She explained that her cousin had paid for her and planned her trip, so she couldn't make hotel arrangements for me and didn't have any savings either. The 5-star luxurious island hotel where she stayed was the same one I chose for her wedding venue. She loved it and eventually booked it for her wedding. Eventually, I realized my budget was exceeding, so I told her I couldn't make it this time. She said it was okay and that she would have a transit to where I live. Previously, she had flown 15 hours to my place twice for her mother's business and had another family trip here, during which I drove her and her family around for 15 to 16 hours every day for 2 to 3 weeks without them having to pay for gas or anything, as good friends do. My mother suggested I use her savings because she felt bad that my best friend had invited me to help plan her wedding, but I couldn't attend. This is the first wedding among my friends that I would have the chance to go to. Most of my high school friends are from developing countries like me, and many have moved back to their hometowns, which is why I couldn't attend their weddings. I'm unemployed. Not completely broke, but I don't have enough savings to plan a trip to another country. Fast forward, my mom lent me her savings, and I booked my flight for the same day she was landing, which surprised her and made her quite happy. The next day, I met her and her cousin at her hotel, which was 30 minutes away from mine. She was staying at a 5-star hotel on an island, while I opted for a more affordable 4-star option. Before we ordered lunch, I checked the prices and ended up choosing a basic dish that cost 10 times more than what I would pay at local stores that I intended to pay her back after lunch, just like we used to when we studied together in XXX country, especially since they ordered meals that were well beyond my budget. It wasn't feasible for me to cover the cost for all of us, which is something I usually do when I'm at home. I felt quiet during lunch because I'm quite introverted when it comes to socializing with new people. As I listened to them talk, their conversation turned to imitating how to ask for the bill at a restaurant. Everyone demonstrated how they would call for it until her cousin asked me. I told her that usually the people around me ask for the bill, not me. She then replied with the straightest face, "Oh, so basically you eat the food and make others pay for it because you don't want to pay." My friend, her little brother, and her cousin all laughed and joked about how broke I must be, even adding some comments in their language that I didn't understand. I tried to clarify that wasn't the case and explained that I'm an introvert and feel very self-conscious. She responded, "Oh, so you're just an introverted person," and then moved on to another topic. However, That comment stuck with me because after 8 years of friendship, my friend had never made jokes about my financial situation, especially knowing the economic differences between her and my country. It felt inconsiderate, and I sensed a change in her demeanor compared to our daily Zoom calls before the trip. As the day went on, I found myself overanalyzing what had happened, so I told my friend I'd transfer her the cost of my food because it was expensive. She asked why I felt the need to pay her back, insisting that we were friends. I explained that I was bothered by what her cousin had said about making others pay for my food, which wasn't true. My friend responded that her cousin was joking and that her parents had sent money for my food and transportation since I traveled to support her wedding plans. Despite that, I insisted on paying her back because, in my mind, it didn't seem like a joke when her cousin said it with a straight face, and then they all laughed and made comments about it. I spent 30 minutes going back and forth about spending time with her because she initially told me she was sharing her hotel room with her little brother. She mentioned that if she had separate rooms, I could stay with her instead of paying extra for my hotel, since I had come on this trip solely for her. However, when I arrived, I saw that she had separate rooms but didn't want to share, explaining that her cousin had paid for their rooms, and she didn't want to make her cousin feel like she was randomly inviting a friend to stay in a room her cousin had paid for. I found that contradictory, but let it go, as I wouldn't want to impose on someone who didn't want me there. Ultimately, I brushed it off and continued with my days at the affordable hotel. In the final days of my trip, I mentioned to my best friend how excited my parents were about having lunch or dinner together once she arrived at my place. Our families have known each other for quite some time. She said she needed to talk to her cousin and little brother and would let me know if they could join. I offered to help convince her little brother if needed, emphasizing that she was our main guest, and she agreed. I know her little brother can be tough at times, so I decided to ask him right away to help my parents plan their day. He said he'd come over if my friend did. I thought if I could convince him, it might make things easier for her since she's busy with the wedding venues. Another thing I noticed was that my friend had initially mentioned needing my help with wedding decoration selection, but during my visit, she never asked for my opinions or preferences. Instead, she seemed more focused on getting feedback from her cousin, who offered to cover 30 to 40% of her wedding at the luxurious island hotel I had found for her. This made me feel undervalued, as I couldn't contribute that kind of money to grab her attention. I felt a bit isolated during the trip. I had thought she wouldn't choose that luxury venue because it seemed too expensive for her, but it really was breathtaking, and out of all the options she considered, it was clearly the best. I felt that she did not want my opinion, especially after I flew all the way to another country for her wedding tasks, covering my own flight, hotel, transportation, and daily expenses. Made my trip feel like a bad idea and unnecessary considering that I borrowed my mom's savings for this trip. I ended up just tagging along to her wedding meetings while she sought her cousin's input instead of asking for mine. Fast forward to the day after I returned home, she landed at my place. During her last 2 visits, I was the one who drove her around, so I offered to pick her up from the airport. However, she mentioned that her cousin had already arranged transportation for her. This made me feel like there was a shift in our dynamic. It might seem like a small thing, but she always called me when she arrived so I could show her around, and this time it felt different. She stayed here only for 4 days, so I asked her if she could make some time for our lunch/dinner, that I didn't share what happened during my trip with my parents because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, especially since they hold her in such high regard. My parents were heavily insisting on the lunch/dinner plan, considering that they sent their daughter to another country, so she could support her friends' wedding plans at their own expense. After I texted her about it, she mentioned that she was very busy and would check with her cousin and little brother. I then told her that I had already spoken to her brother, and he agreed. To my surprise, she seemed a bit frustrated and said she would let me know if she can, despite almost begging for 30 minutes of her time. She kept reminding me how bold her cousin is and that she might not agree to let my friend visit or have lunch/dinner with my family. I told her that I didn't care how bold her cousin was. She needed to come and have a meal with my family, who were really looking forward to it. However, she continued to emphasize that her cousin paid for the trip, so she had to follow whatever her cousin said. This didn't make sense to me. I was sure her cousin wouldn't mind her spending 30 minutes with my family. It felt more like an excuse. I felt helpless and hurt because I traveled all the way to another country for her, offered to pick and drop her wherever she wants me to, yet she's not ready to spare 30 minutes to meet my parents, who were looking forward to her visit. It felt like I was on the verge of begging her to make the effort. To make matters worse, I saw her posting about her night outs even after she told me she was too busy to find any time. That same day, I confided in her about feeling a shift in our friendship. Her response felt unempathetic. "I have a feeling you know what's bothering you, but aren't saying it. Please don't make me read between the lines. Just say it. I guess the case is closed until you figure it out. LOL, because I don't know what you mean. I don't feel different, and no one's ever told me I'm acting differently, so I don't know how to help you with this." She then sent me an emoji after I apologized for bringing it up without being able to articulate what was bothering me. That same night, she mentioned she would stop by my house briefly since she was very busy. She came by the next afternoon, and I thanked her before driving her to another city for a spa appointment she couldn't miss. She also mentioned that she couldn't meet me on her last night here because she had dinner planned with another family friend before leaving. I hardly saw her during her visit to my place, and she remarked that my trip to her country was a smart move since she had so little time to meet while she was here. Fast forward to her return to her country. I expected we'd pick up our paperwork since she had approaching deadlines. However, she only called me once to confirm a checklist I worked on. The last time I reached out was on Thursday, but she hasn't responded yet, and it's now Sunday. I tried calling again last night, but she declined. Normally, when she was busy before our trip, she would at least text me to say she was on another call or occupied with a task. But this time she hasn't replied at all, despite my messages and calls. When I said we'd have daily Zoom calls, I meant we'd be on the call for about 12 hours a day, working and just chilling, so this sudden shift has given me massive anxiety. Please note that my parents initially questioned why my friend wasn't willing to cover the cost for the trip she asked my help with, considering she earns in dollars while my income is nearly 4 times less. They mentioned that if she requested my assistance with wedding selections, she should be the one paying for all the expenses. I brushed off their concerns, saying I couldn't ask her to pay for my trip, and ended up borrowing from my parents' savings. Getting back to work-related matters, I really need the well-paying remote job she promised me in her business. I'm feeling concerned about my mental health because I'm uncertain about what might have led to her behavior, or if there were any misunderstandings. Communicating with her often feels defensive, and it seems like there isn't a willingness to address the issue. This situation is making me reflect on the value of our friendship, which is a challenging feeling for me. I'm feeling anxious and uncertain about this situation and our friendship. I'm considering not reaching out again until she does, since I've already made 2 attempts. I value our friendship and have been putting in a lot of effort to maintain it, but I'm questioning how it affects my self-respect. I wonder if I might be overthinking things. What are some ways to approach this moving forward? TLDR, I'm an unemployed citizen from a developing country living in a developed one, navigating my friendship with an extroverted friend from a first-world country. After traveling to assist her with wedding planning, I felt undervalued and have noticed a change in our communication. She's been less responsive, which has made me anxious about her behavior. I'm wondering how to approach this situation moving forward and how it might be impacting my mental health. What are some potential steps I can take?